Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior Design Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope my audio is in sync today. Let me know in the chat if everything sounds and looks good, but I hope you're all doing well on this Thursday morning, afternoon, or evening if you are tuning in live here on Behance. Let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Jeff and Kane, Robert and Umacorn, Jack, Oliver, great to see all of you. Hello, SK Arif, great to see you as well. Yes, sir. Ooh, the audio might be, I think I may have figured out the issue, but I don't want to jinx it. I do not want to jinx it. All right, so we are continuing our holiday streams. Paco, great to see you as well. We need to get together one day. It's been a long time. Well, Max, but aside from Max, we need to get together and hang out. All right, so what are we going to be doing today? Let me hop over to my screen and we are going to dive into some fanciness as always, right? So this you may have seen on Twitter, you may have seen on Instagram. I've been working on a lot of fun assets behind the scenes. I've been putting together this movie poster. Originally, it was for internal demos, but then I realized, you know what? Let me start using it externally because it's so fun, right? And I figured we have a holiday stream. Why not winterfy it, festivify it? I don't know what the word is, but we're going to create a winter version of this poster. We're going to be using Photoshop, we're going to be using Project Neo, Adobe Express, Firefly, all sorts of fun stuff. Time permitting, of course, right? So we're going to dive in and we're going to start creating this poster. Let me just pull up my cheat sheet over here. Very good. Hold on. Someone's messaging. Just got to make sure. Okay. Making sure it wasn't technical difficulties. So what we're going to do, we're going to start in Photoshop and we're going to build out the base of the movie poster. So I'm going to create a new document, Command and Control N. And for the size, it's completely up to you. I'm starting around 1260 by 1920, right? Something in this area. Now, very important. I am creating this poster strictly for digital purposes. So having the resolution at 72 works great for me because I'm going to be posting on the web, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be. However, if you are actually creating something like this for print, you're going to want to bump this baby up from 72 to like 250, 300, just so you have all the pixels available when you're printing, right? Hopefully you and your printer, not the physical printer, but like whoever is printing stuff for you is communicating well with you. But I'm going to stick with 72 and I'm going to press create. And now I have a nice movie-sized poster that I can start with. All right, next thing, we need an image for the background. Now if I hop over to Finder, boop, right over here, I have a bunch of images that I've started to work with and gather. Some of them are from Adobe Stock. I have a video down here. Some of them are from a brand kit that we're working with. Some of them have been generated. So I'm going to hop into landscapes and I have this photo right here. Beautiful rocky landscape with a nice night sky in the background. Now, what I would typically do is just boop, pop this into place and make it larger. But we're going for a winter theme for this. So what I want to experiment. Now, of course, we could go to Adobe Stock, right? And we could look up Adobe Stock. We can do something like rocky, snowy, landscape. And we can start browsing Adobe Stock to find something that would work well for our movie poster, right? I'm going to go to filters. You can sort, you can choose just photos, you can exclude generative AI if you want to, all sorts of things that you can do. But I'm thinking, I've got this great photo here that I want to base my winter scene on. What if we can winterfy it, right? Have you ever used 300 for web, or is that overkill? I personally haven't. Sometimes I'll go up to like 144 or something like that. But I found it's usually not necessary. Although, you've got Retina to figure out, but usually that's just like doubling your resolution. There's a lot to go into it, but usually for print, you want to bump up that resolution. But otherwise, 72 usually works well. So again, I have this wonderful photo over here, and I want to winterfy it. So we can experiment with Adobe Firefly to do that. So I'm going to go up in here and type out something like rocky, snowy landscape with large rocks on either side, let's say starry night sky, if I can spell properly. Now, originally, when this generates, you're going to get something that doesn't look like your photo, the one that we just looked at, for obvious reasons, because it doesn't know what we want to mimic, right? So what I want to do, and by the way, we have fast mode now, which is wonderful. It goes really fast. I can turn that on just to show you, and I can switch this over to portrait, but I want to really focus here. I'm going to turn this to photo on composition. So I can take this photo here and boop, pop it into place, press continue, and I'm going to bump up the strength. And what it's going to do is it's going to look at the structure of that photo and try to mimic that as best as possible along with the prompt. Now, if you keep it at 100%, then it's going to try to mimic it as closely as possible. If you drop it, it'll give it a little bit more flexibility. So let's go ahead, and Jack says, gotta go fast. Indeed, and you're gonna notice it's fast, right? Now, the resolution of these in fast mode is very low. But if you're just brainstorming and you want to see what it looks like, you can get some pretty decent results very quickly, right? And you can maybe increase the visual intensity to get even fancier. Now, if you go too high, it's going to look a little bit too artistic, but look how fast that goes. Really cool. I can switch this over to art if I want to try to get some additional style results. It looks about the same. You can also add in some effects down here. Things like hyper realistic is probably one of my favorite. Boop. And again, it is fast. There we go. And if you do come across one that you really like, again, low resolution, you can press upscale. Then it goes through the process of the slower Firefly, right? Which is giving you much more detail, much higher resolution, and now you have a much nicer photo that you can work with. Now, as you start to experiment with the prompt, and just to kind of show you, right? I'm going to download this. I'm going to pop this into bloop, right over here. So we've got our rocky landscape, original one, and then look at how well that mimicked the original, which is really cool. So if you want to like restylize a photo to use in a different scene, you can do that. Now, as you start experimenting with the prompt, you can get some really interesting results, different skies, all sorts of different things. And this one over here is actually what we're going to be using. So I'm going to go back over to Photoshop and boop, pop it into place and make it larger. All right. Now, on the topic of our background, right? I love this sky, but I might want to kind of weave something else into it, maybe a planet in the background very subtly, right? So what I want to do is I want to actually select either the sky or the foreground. So you can do that in a variety of ways. You can grab your object selection tool, which by the way has been updated in the beta. I released a video on Instagram and basically all the platforms. And if you have people, it can detect people, but it can also detect facial features, clothes, all sorts of different things. So you're noticing as I'm moving over top of either the sky or the foreground, I can select either of them, right? And then I can create a new layer, Command and Control J to create a new layer. So now I have just the sky. Now you might be asking, what is the point of that? Well, if I hop back over to Finder and I grab, let's say, a planet, which I did not put into my folder because I am brilliant. There we go. I have an Adobe Stock. I also have this one here, but I want to grab this one, boop, pop it into place. Now, if you pop it in here, it's encompassing the entire photo, which we don't want. Now, the first thing we want to do is probably remove the background. Now, we can very easily do that with a click. And there it goes. Now, it struggled a little bit at the bottom because the color at the bottom of the planet was the same color as the background, but we're going to be hiding that anyway, right? Now, we want to be able to grab this planet and basically put it inside of the sky that we selected. And we can do that by either right-clicking, and then there are a lot of things here, right? I always lose Create Clipping Mask. Where are you? It's here somewhere. There it is at the bottom. You can do that, or you can hold down your Alt or Option key, hover, and click. And that will place it basically inside of the sky. The other option would be to select the actual foreground, something like that. You can also dive into Select and Mask if you want to get really technical and really specific. This over here, I definitely don't want selected, right? All the ground here. So I'm just going to paint over top of that. I don't want this selected, right? And you can just really refine your selection as you need it. That looks pretty good. And I'm gonna go ahead and output the selection as a layer mask. Or actually, let's go for a new layer with a layer mask. That way, I can just grab the planet. I'm kind of going all over the place, aren't I? And then boop, there we go. So either way works. You can either extract the sky or you can extract the foreground, whatever works for you. Now, the planet, I'm not a big fan of the way it's looking right now. It looks a little bit, it doesn't really blend in with this over here. So there's a few things we can do. We're gonna try a neural filter first. I'm actually gonna show you that on the astronaut in a second, but I'm gonna go up to filter, neural filters, and I wanna go to harmonize or harmonization. And I'm gonna select the background layer. And it helped a little bit at the top, but the darker area didn't help too much. I can adjust the strength or the brightness if I wanted to. It's not terrible, but it's not great. But also down here, you're noticing, you know, it's, well, first of all, the extraction's not wonderful, but we've got a lighter area, almost like fog. So what we're gonna try to experiment with is we're gonna add, and I don't know if this is gonna work very well, we're gonna add a solid color, and we're gonna do something like a light blue, almost to match down here, right? Something like that. And we're gonna clip it to the planet, and we're gonna use our layer mask to hide parts of it and then show parts of it. Now, the way layer masks work is it works in blacks and whites. You can also use grays, but primarily blacks and whites. Everything that is black, painted black or using a gradient will be hidden. Everything that is white will be visible. So I'm gonna grab my gradient, command, or just the G key, and then paint. Now I wanna go this way, right? Ooh, there we go. So now we have a little bit of fog at the bottom of our planet, and the top is nicely visible. Now you could potentially experiment with blend modes on the planet itself. The thing is, with blend modes, it's gonna hide parts of your layer, in this case the planet, making the planet slightly transparent, which, no, planets are not transparent, at least the ones that we know about, right? So keep that in mind, right? A lot of different ways to experiment and, you know, manipulate something like this. But I don't want to spend too much time on the planet itself. That looks pretty good. Now, what I want to do here is add in our good friend, the astronaut. So I'm going to hop back over to Finder, and we do have a folder of astronauts. Some of them I've already extracted. This one I used in one of my TikToks. I put a little skeleton and glitched it out a little bit. It was kind of fun. But I have this floating astronaut right here, and I'm going to bloop, 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 pop it into place. Now, that was totally a mistake. I was on the wrong layer. Although I really don't hate this. This is kind of fun. It's a happy little mistake. The astronaut is massive, taking over this planet. I'm questioning whether this is the direction I want to go with this this composition, but for now I'm going to move the astronaut on top. Although, even with that little fog at the bottom, you get some cloud textures, you put that in. Ooh, okay, I'm going to do some experimenting after that. But we've got our astronaut, right? Again, we want to remove the background. Simple button at the bottom on our contextual taskbar. And I know some of you hate the contextual taskbar. It's grown on me. It has everything that I need right here. If you don't like it, press the dots and then hide the taskbar. If you've hit it and you want to bring it back, window, contextual taskbar. You can also move it and then pin it if you want. So there's a lot of fun things you can do with that taskbar. Anyways, we've extracted our astronaut. Maybe I'll rotate the astronaut just a little bit. Carol, it's 81 degrees. I wish it was 81 degrees where I am. Although, it depends if you're in Florida, then it's probably humid and I don't like that. But if it's like a nice 81 degrees, I will take that. All right, so we've got our astronaut. It doesn't blend too badly with the background, but let's try out that harmonization neural filter one more time. Making sure I'm on the layer, filter, neural filters, and then we're gonna switch down to harmonization and we're gonna select our background layer. We should see a very subtle change. Subtle, we can bump up the strength, but it works. So if I turn this off and then on, especially on the highlights, it adds a little bit of blue in there because it realized that there's a little bit of blue in the background, right? South Florida, yeah. I lived in South Florida for about 5 years in the Miami area. can't deal with the humid. But Orlando's not too bad. Orlando's not bad. All right, press OK. And now we have our astronaut looking pretty fancy on our scene. All right, so we've got our astronaut, we've got our background. We want to do a few additional things. We want a logo, we want some text, some fancy text, and we want some asteroids and rocks floating around the astronaut, specifically to prepare us for animation in Adobe Express. So we're going to do the easy thing first. I have a logo, been working with in a brand kit, and I have the logo over here, and boop, pop that into place, make it a bit smaller. I want to make sure to center it. I can either move it like this until it snaps, or I can select all, Command and Control A, and then right up here, boop, pop it. Wonderful, right? We've got our logo. Now, I might want a big text layer right here that says Cosmic. Now, if you caught the Instagram reel that I posted, right underneath it says Sans as well, right? I forget what typeface that is. Not that it really matters. It's all around Gothic. But Cosmic Sans, and then inside of Express, I animated it so that the M flickered a little bit. So it became, oh no, the S flickered. So it became Comic Sans. I thought I was very clever with that. But anyways, what I want to do here is I want to grab my text layer, shortcut key T, and type out Cosmic, Cosmic. And the typeface I'm using was from Adobe Fonts, and it's called OHM, O-H-M. If you don't have that, hop over to Adobe Fonts over here, and you can search OHM, right? There it is there. Or if you want to browse fonts, hop over to the Browse All section. You've got a bunch of different categories over here. I believe I found that one in the inline section, and you can just type out cute or cosmic, whatever it might be, right? And you can see the previews, and I believe OHM was somewhere in this list, right? But once you have it and you've synced it and all that fun stuff, now keep in mind that a typeface like this, a stylistic typeface, is going to look absolute trash at this size, right? So make it nice and large. Much better, right? Now I'm thinking it could be kind of cool to have some like layering effects. Now we've already extracted the background, so I can just grab the cosmic layer and move it behind. Ooh, fancy, right? Move this up a little bit. Might be a little bit too large. And then even though we're going to be doing some neon styling inside of Adobe Express, if we have some time, I do want to jump into our layer styles by double clicking on the layer. And then I can add something like a stroke, which is kind of like a border. And I'll do like a nice blue stroke. There we go. Ah, Daniel, you have an interesting preoccupation with Comic Sans. I do. It's like a love-hate relationship. I love hating on it, but it's also a very good typeface for people with dyslexia, which is amazing. So yeah, it's a fun thing to poke at. I've actually tried looking at the comicsans.com domain name. It's like $17,000. So no, thank you. But I can also add an outer glow, and you can definitely experiment with the different opacity level. Ooh, fancy. And then things like the blend mode. I think linear dodge should be pretty good. Range, all this fun stuff. But you've gone from a relatively basic layer to something neon. And again, we're going to restyle that in Express to make it flicker and all that fun stuff. But cosmic, beautiful. Now, we can also add some type layers down at the bottom, but I don't want to waste too much time. I can always Martha Stewart that and grab that from another document. But I want to add some asteroids and some rocks. Now, there are a few ways we can do this. You can either go to Adobe Stock, look up some asteroids, right? Asteroids, right? But there are times where you have something very specific that you can't find. In this case, I want asteroids that are covered in snow. You probably won't find that on Adobe Stock because I don't think there are asteroids covered in snow, right? Asteroids in space are moving very fast. They might have ice on them sometimes, the comets, but you can use our generative workspace inside of Photoshop to generate something that you might, now Martha's a verb, it might be. Right, so I've already started experimenting with things like rocks, using prompts like small gray dark rock, or I can use something like asteroid, covered in snow, isolated on a black background. And that last bit is very important. Otherwise, you're probably going to get an asteroid in space, right? And that's kind of where it naturally is, right? So if you add covered in snow, isolated on a black background, you get something like this. And of course, you can dive back in and control, although got some space or stars back there, but that's totally fine. Let's go for dark gray asteroid because I have something very specific in mind for these asteroids. Now, another thing you can potentially do is create your own asteroid using something like Project Neo. Now, I'm not gonna spend too much time because it's gonna, every time I use Neo on a stream, it bogs down my computer. But you can do something like this. I'm gonna do it very quickly. I have a lot of Neo content on my channels, but you might want a sphere, right? And the nice thing about Neo is it makes it very easy to manipulate 3D objects. And I can duplicate this, and we can use some of our carving effects. So we have over here, carve, which basically cuts a hole. Now it looks like the Death Star, which is not what I want, but I can also blend this. Ooh, fancy. Right? So I can do something like that. I can also adjust the color. It's a beautiful asteroid, I know. Not really. And I can spend a little bit of time just kind of moving these around, blending them together to create these little, oops, nope, don't want that, wrong button. Make some bigger, make some smaller. Look at that, beautiful asteroid. Terrible asteroid, but you get the idea. Spend a little bit more time on your designs. We now built into Project Neo, I can already hear my computer. The fans are going bananas. I can go ahead and create image from scene. And the nice thing is it works very similar to Firefly, but it uses depth and structure a little bit more. So I can just do something like asteroid covered in snow, right? And generate. And it's going to generate something with this structure, which is really cool. So as you start building out and you get really more in depth with the asteroid that you're building, again, this is an ugly looking asteroid. You can get some interest, now it looks like it's screaming, but you can get some interesting results if you select like photo and experiment with the strength and intensity, and especially if you start experimenting with things like, let me carve this, right? You can control the shape of your asteroid using blending. Ooh, fancy. Look at that. Can you bring in a 3D object from Adobe Stock and then manipulate it in Neo? You can't. So in Neo right now, you cannot import or export, hopefully in the future. I know that's a big request, but yeah, the team is definitely focused on, ooh, look at that, right? Get some fancy results just by moving things around, and then you can hop back into create image from scene, and then we've got photo selected, I think. Visual intensity, I'm gonna drop on a black background. I completely spelled that incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure Firefly will know what I'm trying to say. And we should get an asteroid that looks like the one that we modeled, more or less, right? I probably have to experiment again with the strength and intensity and all that fun stuff. They did change a few things to make it a little bit more user-friendly here, but you get the idea, right? But not to bog down my computer, I do want to go back to Photoshop. And then we've got some asteroids here. Hold on, where's the dark gray ones? Here we go. It's not exactly the color that I want, but when you do find one that you do want, I'm gonna go ahead and add to my existing document, separate layers, beautiful, add. All right. Move it on top. And then I'm going to remove the background, just like we did before. Wonderful. Now I can start going ahead and just placing these around my document like this. I've got one here. Maybe I'll move it behind the astronaut to give some layering, right? Hop back into my generative workspace. I think I can also select multiple of these asteroids, I think. Maybe not. Maybe you can in the future. I don't know. But I also started to generate some smaller rocks like this. So I'm going to add this to my document as a separate layer. Save. I probably should. You know what? I like playing things risky. I'm not going to save. I'm not going to do it. We do have, Photoshop thankfully has recovery. So if it does crash, which doesn't happen very often, thankfully, but if it does, we're in good hands. We are in good hands. Remove background. All right, make this smaller. These will be the smaller rocks that'll kind of float around. And the nice thing is, you're noticing here, right? Let me zoom in a little bit. Thanks for joining, Peter. We'll see you next time. We've got a little bit of a border on here, but because we're using a layer mask, I can always dive in there, select and mask, and then shift the edge. I can also feather it if I wanted to. Decontaminate colors, all sorts of fun stuff to get the exact result that I am looking for. Now we've got these fancy rocks floating around, right? Generative workspace. Let's try, I did have some other colored rocks over here, these like brownish. Will they work? I don't know. Will they go with the scene? Who knows? But we're going to add them anyway, right? Document, untitled. I'm going to keep it untitled for the rest of its life. All right, remove the background. Beautiful. Yeah, this one I don't think really goes with, but what we can do, if we wanted the rock a different color, is we can use an adjustment layer, right? Now, I guess if we're talking physics here, right, and these rocks were floating because this planet hypothetically doesn't have much gravity, there probably wouldn't be snow on it. The snow would probably, it doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. I have a lot of stuff open, don't I? All right, so I'm going to go down here to the bottom, and we're going to apply, let's say, a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Now, adjustment layers are non-destructive adjustments that you can add to your images, right? Keep in mind that if you add an adjustment layer at the top of your layer stack and you start adjusting the color, you're going to notice things are happening, right? You may have eaten too many mushrooms. I don't know. But you want to make sure to apply it just to the layer below it. So you can right-click and then create clipping mask. Or again, like I mentioned earlier, hold down Alt-Option and click. And now it applies it just to the layer it's clipped to, which is wonderful. So you might want maybe a blue rock. Probably not. Or you can just drop the saturation. You can even control the brightness, which I wouldn't suggest, or the lightness as it calls it here. I wouldn't suggest using hue and saturation to adjust that. I would actually use something like curves. Again, make sure to clip it. And that way you can add these points here so that you can avoid messing with the highlights up here at the top. So you can only, if you want to just drop the shadows or the midtones, right? That way the snow is nice and bright. And then you're just controlling, right? So if we take a look here, if I turn off these adjustment layers, there's the before, and then there's the after, right? Again, hue and saturation, drop the saturation, adjusted the curves a little bit. Very subtle. That looks pretty good. You get the idea, right? I'm not going to add too many. Maybe I'll add one more asteroid just because there's a space over here that I need filling. And we'll do, this one looks fancy. We're going to add to a new, or untitled. Here we go. Remove the background. You get the idea, right? Beautiful. We've got another asteroid. I'll put it right over here, maybe on top of the, ooh, I see something. You're noticing when I remove the background, it added a little hole over here. That's the nice thing about layer masks. I can always dive in, click on the layer mask, grab my brush, make it smaller, either up here at the top or using my right and left square bracket keys on the keyboard, and then paint in white. Beautiful. There we go. All right, so we've got some asteroids. We've got some rocks floating around. I don't love this one, but we're going to run with it. And then we're going to add some additional text on this movie poster. Maybe at the top, we'll want some names of maybe who's starring in this little movie or whatever it is. Move this down a bit. Yeah, move the astronaut up. And then we've got some room up here for some text. Now, what I want to do at the top is grab our text layer, and we'll start with the first name, right? Now, up here, the names are going to be much smaller. As I was mentioning earlier, whoops, a stylized typeface like this looks terrible at a small size, right? So we're gonna switch to something like Good Times, if I can spell again. And we'll do something like light. And maybe I'll just, nice light color like this. Beautiful, it's a bit too large. And then maybe to stylize this just a little bit, I'll do Howard, and then on the next line, I'll do Pinsky. Whoops. Howard Pinsky. But I'll select this part of the layer and maybe I'll bump this up to heavy, just to really focus on the last name. And then over here, I will do, I'm gonna pick someone from the chat. I'm gonna put Kane Lira. All right. Now I do want to make sure that these are spaced evenly from each other. So we have 3 layers. We have Howard Pinsky, the logo, and then Kane Lira. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. Words are hard. I'm going to go ahead and select all 3 of these. So I have one selected. I'm going to hold down my Command and Shift key, click, and then click. Now, I probably should group these, but what I want to do is up here we have our alignment and distribution options. I'm going to press on this one over here, distribute horizontally, just to make sure that they're all nicely aligned. And then I'm going to group these and then center these in the document. Now, something to keep in mind, right, is when I did that, the logo is no longer centered in the middle of our document, which is probably not what we want. Now, if I go ahead and go to View, Guides, New Guide, and do something like 50%, you're going to notice it is way off. So there's, you can either move that and snap it into place, but then the names are a little bit off. So there's definitely some visualizing that you have to do for something like this. I don't love the way that's looking. I don't love it, but maybe I need a longer name for the second one. I don't know. But we're going to just run with it. There's obviously a lot of different workarounds you can do, but I'm not too concerned right now. All right, then down at the bottom, hey, great to see everyone who is just joining. Down at the bottom, we're going to want some additional text. We'll do something like world premiere. Definitely don't want myriad. I think Good Times could probably work for this. What did I have in my other document? Yeah, I had Good Times bold. Beautiful. Now we're going to run into another problem, and you're probably already seeing the problem. But I'll tackle that in just a second. What day is it? 19? 19. 2024. Maybe we'll change this to a nice, like, vibrant, obnoxious highlighter green. Still noticing the problem, aren't you? Are you? Big problem. Accessibility problem. Now, I'm also gonna I'm just gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna grab this text layer and pop it into place. All right. So we've got some additional information down here at the bottom. But as you can probably tell, it is very difficult to read anything down here because we have some white text on a light background. There's a lot going on. So one thing you can do is you can create an overlay right behind it. So if I go ahead and grab, go right behind these text layers, I can create, let's say, let me grab a gradient up here at the top. I can just do foreground to transparent, or, I already have black to white over here, but if you wanted to, just switch this to transparent, foreground to transparent, and then that's a little bit better, right? You can also, reduce the opacity just a little bit. Something like that. There we go. So we are making progress. Oop, I have the wrong layer selected. Let me just go ahead and rasterize this. I'm going to make the astronaut a little bit larger. Rotate. Oh, I forgot there was a neural filter on there. So now we got to wait until our beach ball stops. I don't know if it's a bug or it's just like reprocessing in the background, but when you have a smart object with a neural filter on it, like the harmonization filter, and then you resize it, Okay, there we go. I thought, who was it that told me that yelled at me? Was it Carol that yelled at me to save earlier? I thought I was going to have to admit that I was wrong. But anyways, we've got our poster looking pretty good. Now, over here in Finder, I do have a version of that poster. I thought I did. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Hold on. Let me go over here. I don't know where this is going to save to be honest. So let me just switch to my face just for a second, just to make sure it doesn't save to a folder that has very confidential stuff. Because we're working on a lot of confidential things, and I don't want to spoil anything, because that would be not great. And I'm sure there are, where did I save that original one to? I have no idea. But I know you're not seeing my screen right now, but I'm just trying to find where to save it. Where is that folder? Ah, that's where I saved it. Okay, hold on. Create, there we go. There we go. And here, did I see, nope. Aha. Hold on. I'm getting there. Okay, we're gonna save it there. I'm gonna save it as untitled because it's hilarious. Okay, we're back. Hi. All right, so I've gone ahead and saved this poster to my computer. And there it is, untitled. Just for you, Carol. All right, so we've gone ahead and done that. Now what we want to do, we want to get fancy with this poster. We want to bring this over to Adobe Express and have a little bit of fun. So I'm going to hop over to Chrome, and I've got Adobe Express open. And I have a bunch of documents down here at the bottom. But what I want to do is I want to start with a new document, or an existing document, I should say. So if I hop over to Finder, I can actually grab this Photoshop file and boop, pop it directly into Adobe Express. In this case, I don't want to link it. I actually want to convert it to an Adobe Express file. And then I'm going to press convert, and we're going to sit back and enjoy. It's going to go through that process. Shouldn't take too long. But one thing I will mention is that Adobe Express has a few limitations when it comes to text layers. So some of the text layers that are going to be transferred over may look a little bit different when it does come into Adobe Express, but we'll fix those when that happens. There we go. Untitled 1 is ready to go. We're gonna press open, and it should look relatively the same. Actually, that's not too bad. But as you can see down here, some of these text layers, this was justified, I think, in Photoshop, and the character spacing was different. So I can just go ahead and maybe I'll center this and adjust the letter spacing here. All right, beautiful. That looks not too bad. The text, oh, you know what? I messed something up. Well, I didn't mess it up. I just forgot to do something specific inside of Photoshop. I'm not too worried about it. We'll work through it. What I wanted to do in Photoshop, let me actually show you the other document, is separate these layers. So we have the CO, the S separately, and then the MIC. That way we can do that flicker effect. So let's go ahead and actually change that here. I'm actually going to just move this behind for a second, and we'll do CO. And we can probably do some outlining here while we're at it, just to give it a little bit of a neon effect like that. We'll go to shadow. We'll put a bit of a glow on there. We'll customize it. We'll get all fancy with it. Ooh, much better. Blur. Angle, I don't care too much for. I think I can control the opacity. Yes, I can. Drop that a little bit. All right, very subtle, right? Beautiful. So we have the CO, and then I'm going to do the S, and then the MIC. Is that spaced properly? I don't know. We're going to run with it. I can also group these. Boop. Beautiful. Move them behind, and there we go. All right, so we have that looking pretty fancy, right? Now, what I'm thinking of doing is animating everything, right? So I want everything to kind of pop into place. And I think it was at Adobe Max this year, possibly, we added the Animate All feature. So I can actually select all the layers, Command and Control A, hop up to Animation, Animate All right here at the top, and we have a few different options: bloom, glide, popping, sunrise, and waterfall. I'm gonna go ahead and choose popping. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't animate them all at the same speed. It staggers them a little bit. So if I play this again, woo, Now there are a few layers that I did not want animated, like this overlay. So I'm going to click on that, animation, and I'm going to put to none. Now what you're going to notice is it kind of just appears, right? And that's where the timeline can come into play. I'm just going to do that. There we go. Chad is asking what font Howard is using for Cosmic. That is the, I believe, the OHM font, OHM. You can find that on Adobe Fonts. All right, so not bad. Fancy, right? I don't know if I would love the planet in the background popping into place. I don't hate it, but I don't know. What do y'all think? One more thing I want to do is I like the popping effect, but I think on the Cosmic group, if I can find it, it's around, here it is. I might want to change that animation. So the group itself is not animating, it's the individual layers inside of it. So if I go over here, I can actually go to animation. I might want to just change that to flicker. So it kind of flickers, right? So I can do the same thing for these ones. It's a little much, so I can dive in here. Maybe the intensity, I'll lower it a little bit. Not bad, okay. And then this one here, change that to flicker, maybe drop the intensity a little bit. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so that's looking pretty good, right? If I play that, aha, very nice. But then it all stops, right? So what we want to do, now we want to go through and animate individually. So we flickered on Cosmic, right? But I only now want the S to continue flickering. So it becomes comic, right? So I'm going to click on the S. And then in addition to the animation in, we also want to loop the animation. So I'm going to choose flicker. And that'll continue. There you go. See, it'll continue the animation, right? And I can also go back and maybe drop the opacity of this particular layer so it's like a broken something or other, right? Something like that. I don't know if this is going to work very well, but let's see. I think it's a little bit too dark, so we'll just keep it at that. We'll just keep the S flickering. And then I'm thinking for some of the other layers, especially the astronaut and the rocks, we might want them to kind of float in this low gravity planet, right? So I'm going to start with the astronaut. We're going to hop into animation. And under loop, we have the bob animation. Now we have a lot of different animations. We have like wiggle, right? Which is fun, but yo-yo, probably not. Although, I mean, maybe there's like a low intensity yo-yo we can do. Probably not, right? So I'm gonna choose bob. I think bob is probably a good one. The gravity is wild on this planet right now. So we're gonna actually dive in and drop the intensity quite a bit and then drop the speed quite a bit. That way the astronaut's very subtly floating in this document, right? And we can do the same thing for our asteroids. Now, I could select all the asteroids and rocks at the same time, right? And apply animation to all of them. But the problem is, it's all gonna have the exact same animation, right? So they're all kind of in sync. So I might just want to dive in here and just very subtly, maybe this one will be 2 or 5, whatever, right? Just tweak them very subtly. Maybe the speed on this one will be a little bit higher. And then I'll do one more over here. All right, that's looking pretty good. I'm liking it. Now you can also control the length of your animation as well. So you can, or the scene at least. I can move this if I wanted, let's say a 7-second scene, I can just adjust that, which looks great. All the animations will adjust as well. So I can play that and everything will continue until that 7 seconds is done. And then optionally, you can also add an out animation. So as it gets closer to that endpoint, you can add something like an out animation where you can maybe shrink the right? Pop it up or grow, or you can flash out, shutter, all sorts of different things. Maybe I can have it like shrink. So as it gets to the end, the astronaut kind of I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's weird. Definitely not bungee. That's just strange. But another thing I like using in Adobe Express is adding additional media files. So what I'm thinking is this might be a very cold planet. It already looks cold. We might want snow or a storm or something like that. So under the media section, I can go to I can go to videos and search snow. And we've got some videos like on a green background, but what I'm looking for is on a black background. Let's see if the preview, it's catching up. Hold on. This one looks like it could work, but the preview has stopped. Here we go. Now some of these are a little bit, that one's not too bad. That one's very subtle. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that. Let's rotate it. And view, make it nice and large. And then what I want to do is I want to use blend modes on this particular video. So I can hop in here and then go to, I think it's screen I want to go to. Yep. And now we've got subtle snow going on. Look at that. Fancy. Let's see if we have any storm. I don't think we'll have a storm on like a black background. We've got some cloud. I mean, possibly. I don't know, maybe. I don't know if that one's gonna work that well, but we could potentially put that behind our foreground that we extracted earlier. We've got some lightning, some clouds going on. What was that one there? Ooh. All right, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know, but we're gonna try. Because sometimes design is all about experimentation, right? So I'm gonna move this back. Maybe animate a reflex in the visor. That could be interesting. I would probably have to mask out. There would probably be a few additional things I would have to do there, but that could be an interesting idea. Let's see, screen. What does that look? Ooh. Look at that. Now, if you wanted a little bit more blue in here, you can also go into effects. I mean, there are a few things you can do. You can either go to adjustments and maybe change the warmth and make it a little bit cooler, something like that. Or, let me reset that. And then go to effects. You can control the shadows and highlights of this particular video, right? So I can go to custom, maybe the shadows I'll want something like this. The highlights, maybe like a purple. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere, right? Let's try this again. Oh man. We are getting fancy now. Now I don't know about this green text layer at the bottom. I'm thinking because we have this purple accent at the top, maybe we can change this to like a purple or pink. The problem is it's gonna blend in way too much down there. So maybe that either, that green or just keep it at, you get the idea, right? But this is looking pretty interesting. Let's do this one more time. Yeah. Now, another thing you can do with Adobe Express, which is really cool, is you can create versions of this for different platforms. So this was orange to complement the blue. Oh, Daniel's saying orange to complement the blue, probably for this text layer, possibly. And that's kind of what I originally had in my original photo. I had like an orangey yellow, I think. Where is it? This one here. Now, it worked a lot better with the orangey background, but it's not bad. Maybe I have to, let me bump up the weight a little bit. Go to heavy. It might work. It'll work, I think. Possibly. Who knows? But now we're getting somewhere. We are getting fancy. Now, what I was going to say is you can create different versions of this for different platforms. So if I hop up here to resize, we have over here, you can choose Instagram square post, stories. Now, right now, this document is like a movie poster size. So it's not going to look perfect on, let's say, an Instagram story. So I can go ahead and select that. Now, keep in mind, by default right now, generative expand is on. which won't work well with things like movies, which we have in the background. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to duplicate and resize. If I were to simply press resize, it would resize the page that I'm on right now. Don't want to do that because I don't want to lose this. So I'm going to duplicate and resize. Of course, you can select multiple. Let's actually do Instagram Square Post as well. Here we go. And now we have a few different options. Now, obviously what you're noticing is we need some adjustments on some of these. Now, maybe there'll be a one day, hey, Katrina, I summoned the Adobe Express queen herself. Great to see you. And I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments. This is the snow layer, so I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. Whee! Like that. Where is my... This I'll probably have to move down. Let's move this up. There we go. Let's see what this looks like. Yes, sort of, maybe, kind of. Obviously, we need some adjustments. Maybe there'll be a day where it all just adjusts itself, right? But today is not that day. Katrina, make that happen. I'm just kidding. Let me go ahead and I got to select some of these layers. Another thing, if anyone from Express is watching, and this is not directed at Katrina because she's not on that team. She's on our team, which is the best team. But I want to be able to hide these layers. Just let me hide it or select layers underneath. I can hold down Command and click on the layers underneath, but then it selects other layers along with it. Just sometimes I get frustrated with. That's the fun thing about these streams. I get frustrated. Anyways, let me find these text layers. Move this up. Where are the other text layers? This one. Move that up. And frustration comes from love, right? I get frustrated so that hopefully we can get some change. Where's the cosmic? Oh, there it is. Haha. There we go. See, it would be so much easier if I can just select multiple. I suppose I could do this, but then I have to, no, I can't do that. Okay. And I also can't select multiple layers inside of the layers panel by holding down Shift. I better end this stream soon before I get too frustrated. I'm good. I'm good. I'm wonderful. There we go. Fancy. Or selecting from the layers. Yeah, selecting overlay, and yeah, it'll be fixed at some point. But anyways, let's go back. Whee! Here we go. Look at that. Fancy. Now I'd probably, increase the size of the astronaut as well. Because we have more space now. Space. Anyways, where are my pages? Here we go. So we've got our square. I probably have to adjust some of these things a little bit. My overlay. I don't want to spend too much time adjusting these things. You get the idea. And finally, we've got translation. So if I hop over back to this one here, we've got translate right at the top. Oh, here we go. I was looking at the wrong section. Translate to, let's go ahead and let's go Spanish. I won't know if any of this is accurate because I don't speak Spanish. Tone of voice, which is relatively new. Formal, informal, don't change the tone, which is wonderful. And then maybe I'll just do the first page and then translate. Now, some things won't translate properly, like my name, for example, but I think it'll just leave that. But I'm curious to see what it does. And Cosmic, now Cosmic did not translate because we had that separated into 3 separate layers. We had the CO, the S, and the MIC. If that was one layer, then it would translate properly. So things to think about, right? It left the names, beautiful, but down here, it did a good job, I think. It looks great. Is it accurate? I don't know. It should be accurate. It uses a pretty decent AI algorithm in the background. But anyways, that's about it. We've done a lot today. We started in Photoshop, created a beautiful space movie poster, brought that over to Adobe Express. We dove into Firefly. We dove into Project Neo, all sorts of fun stuff. I complained about Adobe Express, again, from a place of love that hopefully some things will be fixed. They're relatively minor things, but that's what I love about these streams. I can pass along feedback to anyone who might be watching from the team. But I do want to say a big thank you as I hit my microphone to everyone who has been watching. Have a wonderful holiday break. We're going to have more content coming up in just a few moments, and I'll see you all next time.